I like my coach on his knees. "That's all you got, coach?" I panted, leaning forward with my hands on my knees. My shirt was clinging to me, sweat drenched and leaving little to the imagination. His shirt wasn't faring much better, and I couldn't help but notice the way it clung to his chest and abs. The guy was ripped, annoyingly so, and the sweat only made it more obvious. Coach Allen's jaw tightened, his arms crossed over his chest. "Get back in position, Nolan," he barked, his voice sharp as ever. But there was a split second where his gaze dipped. Yeah, he noticed. And maybe I had noticed too. Not that I'd admit it. I straightened up, grinning as I jogged back to my spot. "What, you tired already?" I called over my shoulder, loud enough for the rest of the team to hear. They were hanging back, half-heartedly running drills, but mostly watching us like it was some kind of live drama. They weren't wrong. Allen didn't answer, just narrowed his eyes and stepped onto the field. His focus was locked on me, that serious, calculating look that always got under my skin. Or maybe it got under my skin in a way I didn't mind. Either way, it made my blood pump faster. "Again," he said, kicking the ball toward me, hard and sharp. "Let's see if you can back up all that talk." The challenge lit me up. I trapped the ball with ease, the leather cool under my foot, and started moving. My feet danced over the field, cutting through the drills with precision, each touch just a little showy, just enough to make him notice. And he was noticing. His gaze never left me, his expression a mix of frustration and something else, something hotter. When I scored, I turned to him, wiping sweat off my forehead with the back of my hand. "That good enough for you, coach?" I asked, letting the tease drip from my voice. He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "You're fast," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "But speed isn't everything. Let's see if you can think as quickly as you move." I smirked, rolling the ball under my foot. "Careful, coach. You're starting to sound impressed." He didn't blink. "Play the game, Nolan." Oh, I was playing all right. And judging by the heat in his gaze, I was winning too. A week later, the gym is alive with energy. Why wouldn't it be? After all, we're not just practicing for the regular league. This is the big one. The tournament's only 6 months away, and we're all feeling the weight of it. Coach's voice cuts through the noise as he barks out orders, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. I can feel my heart pounding as I line up with the rest of the team. Everyone's pushing harder now. No more messing around. The tournament is the real deal, and every one of us is out to prove something. Coach's eyes are locked on me as I take my shot. The sound of the ball swishing through the net is the only thing that makes me relax, if only for a second. But there's no time for that. We've got 6 months to perfect everything. It's going to be the toughest challenge of our careers, but it's also what we've been working toward. The tournament will be here before we know it, and I'm not about to let it slip through my fingers. A month later, I couldn't help myself. It was too easy. Every day, I found some way to push Coach's buttons. Teasing, flirting, keeping him on edge. The guy was so damn cute when he was all angry and fuming. His brows would furrow, his jaw would tighten, and I'd just sit there grinning, knowing exactly what I was doing to him. Honestly, it was a game to me. I loved getting under his skin, seeing that flash of frustration in his eyes, but also the way his lips would twitch like he wanted to say something more. And it wasn't just about the game. It was about the dynamic between us. I could tell he didn't know how to handle me, and I loved that. Every time I'd break the rules or make some snarky comment, I'd get the same reaction from him. Yelling, lecturing, the whole 9 yards. Today was no different. I made a cheeky move and pulled off something fancy, and Coach was immediately on my case. "Nolan, for the last time, focus on the game!" I just shot him a wink and said, "Relax, Coach. I'm just having a little fun. He clenched his fists and took a step toward me. You're staying behind after practice today, he snapped. You want to keep playing like that? Fine, but you'll do extra work alone with me. I froze for a second. His words sent a flutter directly to my heart. Alone? With him? Now that sounded more like a treat than a punishment. A grin spread across my face, but I quickly masked it with a feigned groan. Guess I have no choice, I muttered, already thinking of all the ways I could enjoy this little punishment. The look he gave me, irritated but also a little bit flustered, told me that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't entirely against it. And honestly, neither was I. Later that evening, after everyone else had left the field, it was just me and Coach. He called me over, standing by the goalpost, already looking like he had another lecture ready. Nolan, he started, calm but serious. Why do you keep fooling around during practice? You're distracting the others. You know how important focus is with the tournament coming up. I leaned back and started juggling the ball with my knee, keeping it balanced before catching it on my foot. Coach, I'm not trying to mess with anyone. I'm just enjoying the game. I grinned, adding, but honestly, it's hard to focus when you're this cute all worked up. Coach froze, clearly caught off guard. His eyes widened, and he opened his mouth as if to say something but came up empty. Then, as he stepped back, his foot caught on the ball and he lost his balance, dropping to his knees right in front of me. I raised an eyebrow, fighting back a grin. Whoa, Coach! I won't say I don't like you on your knees for me, but don't you think it's a little too soon? His face turned bright red. He scrambled to his feet, brushing off his shorts. What nonsense are you talking about, Nolan? He stammered, completely flustered. I didn't let him off that easy. I flicked the ball up with my foot and caught it on my knee, stepping closer. I'm serious, Alan. You're cute. And I like you. His eyes widened even more, his face now as red as his training jacket. He backed away quickly and muttered, "This isn't a joke. Go home. Practice is over." I could tell I'd rattled him, and it only made me want to mess with him more. But I decided to back off for now. With a smirk, I flicked the ball back into my hands and walked off the field, watching him storm away in a rush. His reaction was priceless. I'd definitely gotten under his skin. I'd have to find more ways to keep him on edge, but for tonight, I'd let him cool off. After all, seeing him flustered made practice way more entertaining. A week later. It's been a week since that evening, and honestly, things have felt weird. Coach hasn't said much to me since then. No more shouting, no more lectures. It's like I've become invisible to him. He keeps his distance, barely even acknowledging me during practice, and it's starting to bug me. At first, I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, I had a crush on him, right? That playful teasing, the flirtation, it was all just fun. But now, it's different. It's like there's a wall between us, and I can't stand it. I've caught myself looking at him more than I should, hoping he'll throw me a look or maybe even yell at me again. But no, nothing. And then it hit me. This isn't just some silly crush. It's more than that. The way my heart sinks when he turns away, the ache when he avoids eye contact, I hate it. I've been fooling myself, thinking it was just harmless fun. But the truth is, I feel so much more for him than I thought I did. The pain of his distance is way worse than I expected. It's like a constant knot in my chest, and it's killing me. I just want him to notice me again. 3 days later, I couldn't take it anymore. The distance, the silence, it was driving me crazy. I had to do something about it. So after practice that evening, I found Coach near the locker room, gathering his stuff. "Coach, we need to talk," I said, stepping in front of him, blocking his way. He stopped, his face tense, like he was already preparing for the worst. "What is it, Nolan?" he asked, voice tight like he was trying to avoid eye contact. I took a deep breath, knowing what I was about to say was going to change everything. "Look, I can't keep pretending this is just some stupid crush," I started, my words spilling out in a rush. "I care about you, more than I should. I know you feel something too. I can see it in your eyes when you look at me. You're just scared to admit it, right? The rules, everything." Coach's eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say something. But instead, he just clenched his jaw, looking away. "I know you're scared, but it's okay, 'cause it doesn't matter. Not to me, at least. I don't care about the stupid rules, Alan," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I don't care about the game right now. I care about you." "Don't say that again!" he snapped, his voice sharp. "You're good, Nolan. You're damn good. Our country is depending on you to win that trophy. The team, the fans, they need you. You have to care about that more than anything. More than me. More than whatever this is." His words stung, but I didn't back down. "I don't care about anything but you, Coach. I'll do whatever it takes for the team, but I'm not gonna ignore how I feel anymore. I have fallen for you, Alan." I stepped closer, trying to catch his gaze. "I promise you this, if in return you'll confess. Tell me how you feel. Be honest." Coach froze, his face flushed, looking at me like he didn't know what to say. His words stumbled and he backed away from me. I can't. I need to go." And just like that, he turned and walked off, leaving me standing there. My heart sank, but I didn't regret saying it. Maybe one day, he'd finally admit what we both knew. A few days later. It had been a few days since that conversation by the locker room, and the tension between us was still thick. Alan was distant as ever, always keeping to his role as the coach. But there was something in his eyes now, like he was struggling to keep it all together. The way he'd look at me sometimes, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. That night, after practice, I was headed for the door, exhausted from the drills. But then I heard it. "Nolan." I froze, the sound of my name catching me off guard. I turned around, my heart hammering in my chest. There he was, standing by the bleachers, hands stuffed in his pockets. His expression was hard, but his eyes held something else. It was definitely not anger. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked, his voice quieter than I expected. I nodded, walking towards him, my throat tightening. Alan stared at me for a long moment, like he was searching for the right words. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I'm sorry for leaving like I did that day. I shouldn't have walked away. But you know I can't get involved with players. It's against everything." I held my breath, waiting for him to say more. "But I can't deny what's between us, Nolan. I feel it too." My pulse raced, but he wasn't finished. "But the game, it's everything right now. I need you to focus on that. I'll be here for you, but that's all we can be right now. Just focus on the game." It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was something. A crack in the wall he'd built. And maybe that was enough for now. A week later. A week had passed, and the tension between Alan and I was still there, but we were slowly closing the distance. We had a late-night practice, and most of the team had left. I stayed behind, dribbling the ball alone, the sound echoing in the empty gym. Then I heard the door creak. I looked up. There he was, Alan, walking in like it was just another night. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sound casual though my pulse was racing. "I could ask you the same thing," he replied, his voice amused, hair messy from the day's practice. "I wanted to work on a few things," I shrugged. "Just me, the ball, and some space." Alan watched me for a moment, arms crossed, before speaking. "You're pushing yourself too hard." I paused, surprised. "I'm fine." "Yeah?" He raised an eyebrow. "You've been running on empty for days. You need a break." I opened my mouth to argue, but I didn't have the energy. Instead, I just stood there, quiet. Alan sighed, walked to the bench, and sat down, motioning for me to join him. "You've been burning out. Sometimes you gotta stop and breathe." I walked over and sat down next to him. For the first time, it felt like he was seeing me, not just as a player. "You're a damn good player, Nolan," he said softly. "But take care of yourself, too." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Maybe things were finally changing. A few days later. After practice, the gym was nearly empty. I was wiping down the bench when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and there he was, Alan, standing a few feet away, looking like he had something to say but couldn't get the words out. I could feel the tension, the pull between us, and I knew we both felt it. For a second, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the lights overhead. Then, without thinking, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. My heart was racing, but I couldn't stop myself. I reached out, and before either of us could stop it, I kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like neither of us could believe it was happening. But then, as soon as our lips met, he pulled away. His eyes were wide, his breath shaky. He stepped back, hands running through his hair in frustration. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have," he started, his voice tight with regret. This can't happen, Nolan. I'm your coach. I can't do this." His words hit me hard, but I didn't move. He was backing away, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I just stood there, feeling the weight of everything between us. And then he turned and walked out, leaving me standing alone, the taste of him still lingering on my lips. 3 weeks later. It's been 3 weeks since that kiss, and needless to say, he's been avoiding me. I've tried talking to him so many times, pulling him aside, catching him after practice, anything, but every time he avoids me. The distance between us is killing me. It's like I don't even exist to him anymore. I keep telling myself I'll be fine, but it hurts more than I thought it would. Today, I was on my way to the gym, walking through the city, trying to clear my head. I stopped by at a cafe to grab a coffee when something made me look up. And there he was, Alan, sitting at a table, laughing with a woman. They looked close, too close, like something more than just a casual meeting. It looked like a date, and for a moment, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. I couldn't help but stare, confused and a little hurt. Was this his way of moving on? Was this the reason he'd been so distant? The sight stung more than I expected. But then, I saw her face, the woman, and everything inside me froze. It was my stepmother, the same woman who had come into my life after my parents split. The one my dad had chosen over me and my mom. The one who always acted like she cared, but never really did. My stomach twisted with disgust. I couldn't believe it. I turned on my heels, my anger flaring, and marched out of the cafe. I wasn't going to stick around for this. There was no way in hell I was letting her ruin my day. Or my heart. The next day, I couldn't take it anymore. The way Alan had been avoiding me, the way things felt so wrong between us. I had to confront him. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I marched straight to the gym after work, my heart pounding with every step. I wasn't going to let him keep pushing me away without a damn explanation. When I found him, I didn't even bother with the pleasantries. I just stepped in front of him, blocking his way. "Coach, we need to talk," I said, my voice sharp. He looked at me, a flash of annoyance in his eyes. "Not now, Nolan," he tried to say, moving to step around me. But I wasn't letting him go this time. "No, we're talking now," I snapped, stepping into his path. "Of course, you wouldn't have time to talk to me when you're so busy with other things. Like, I don't know, fucking my stepmother?" Alan froze. His eyes widened, and his face turned pale. "What the hell are you talking about?" he stammered, clearly thrown off by my words. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, tapping the screen to bring up the photo I'd taken earlier yesterday. I shoved the phone in his face, showing him the picture of him and her, laughing together at the cafe. "That's what I'm talking about," I growled. "You can't even be bothered to talk to me, but you're out there with her? What, you didn't think I'd see?" Alan's expression faltered, and he quickly shook his head. "Nothing happened between us," he said, his voice low. "I didn't even know she was your stepmother. I swear, Nolan." But I didn't care. I was beyond that. My chest tightened as I looked at him, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you felt something for me too and was just scared. But I guess I was wrong. I must have been delusional. It's my fault for thinking you might care." His face dropped as I turned away, my heart breaking as I walked off, leaving him standing there, probably still in shock. It didn't matter anymore. I wasn't waiting around for him. Over a month later, I didn't show up for the league anymore. I ignored every call from Alan, every text, everything. I wasn't interested in any of it. After that day, I just couldn't handle the way everything had turned out. I even sent the picture of Alan and my stepmother to my dad. Talk about trauma. But honestly, I didn't care. The whole thing made me feel numb. My stepmother was out to get me, and I didn't give a damn. Since everything went south, I've been binging on junk food and sleeping through my days. Nothing mattered anymore. Nothing at all. I hadn't even tried to pick up the pieces of what was left of my heart. It had shattered so badly I couldn't bring myself to care about anything. So when I was on my usual trip to the local supermarket to grab my next batch of snacks, I didn't expect to see Alan standing right in front of me, blocking my path. I tried to ignore him, hoping he'd move aside, but he didn't. He grabbed my arm, and I just stopped, annoyed. "You know, pretty sure that's against the rules too, Coach," I muttered, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. But Alan didn't let go. He stood there, looking like he'd been through hell. His expression was serious, and for a second, I felt a little bad for what I'd said. Then he spoke. "I don't care about the rules, Nolan," he said softly. "I care about you. Too much." I froze. His words hit harder than I expected. "What?" I said, my voice cracking slightly. He sighed, looking at the ground for a second. "Yes, Nolan, I care about you. Even feel something that I'm not sure I understand myself. But you're right. I was scared. And the rules, my career, everything. And most importantly, I didn't want to distract you from the game. But Nolan, I tried to forget you. I even tried online dating just to make it stop. That's how I ended up with your stepmother. I didn't even know who she was, but I don't care. All I care about is making sure you don't ruin yourself over this. I don't want you to lose your chance at everything. The one thing that can make your future. Please, Nolan. He looked at me then, his eyes full of something deeper, like regret and desperation. Just come back. Play the game. Win this. And then, after that, I promise, we'll talk about everything. About us. I stood there, frozen for a second, feeling all kinds of emotions rush through me. I didn't know what to say, but deep down, I knew I had to make a choice. Could I really go back, after all that's happened? I'll think about it, I said, finally pulling my arm away from his grip. I didn't know if that was the right answer, but it was the best I could do. 2 days later. I didn't want to go back. I really didn't. But the truth was, I had hope again. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe there was something worth fighting for. So, despite the hurt and everything that happened, I showed up to practice. It wasn't easy, though. I thought maintaining my composure around Alan would be the hardest part, but it turned out I was wrong. The real test came when we were both called into the president's office. "Mr. Nolan, Coach Allen, please," the assistant said, looking at us with a mix of concern and authority. I followed Alan into the office, the tension already making my skin crawl. I had no idea what was going on. As we walked in, the president was sitting behind his desk, an unusually serious look on his face. "I'm afraid we've had a complaint," he said, voice cold and firm. "There have been allegations of inappropriate behavior, claims of a relationship between you two. Is this true?" I froze, my heart sinking. The rumors, it all clicked. The "got you" texts from my stepmother, the whispers. Suddenly, everything that had seemed so insignificant made sense. Alan and I, of course, had been the subject of gossip. It wasn't even a surprise that someone would take it further. Alan stiffened beside me, and for a second I thought he was going to say something. But instead he just turned to the president, his voice steady but full of authority. "I take full responsibility," he said. "I led him on in the wrong direction. But we are not in a relationship, not in any way. This was all a misunderstanding." The president looked skeptical, and I opened my mouth to speak, but Alan cut me off. "Nolan is the key to this team's future. He's the best hope we've got. Without him, the team doesn't stand a chance." "Coach, I started, but Alan silenced me with a single look. "Nolan," he said softly, his voice steady but full of unspoken emotion. "Trust me." I hesitated, looking at him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw the sincerity in his eyes. Something in me clicked. I had to trust him, even if I didn't understand everything. I gave him a small nod, unable to say the words. "Fine," the president finally said, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. "I'll let this go for now. Get everything sorted with the HR, Coach Allen. And no more mistakes from you, Mr. Nolan. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Alan replied, and with that, the meeting ended. We were both dismissed, but as we stepped out of the office, Alan gave me a small, reassuring smile. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time, I felt like maybe we were on the same side. A few minutes later, we were finally out of the president's office, the heavy door closing behind us. I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me, and before I knew it, tears were running down my face. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why, Alan?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why did you do it? Why did you take the blame for something that wasn't even true? You didn't have to do that for me." Alan stood still for a moment, looking at me like he was searching for the right words. Then his expression softened, and he stepped closer to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I love you, dummy." I froze. I couldn't process it at first. It felt like the world had stopped, and I couldn't even catch my breath. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of his words. "You... what?" I gasped, my heart pounding in my chest. "You love me?" Alan nodded, his gaze steady but filled with emotion. "Yeah, I do," he said, his voice firm. "But don't say anything right now, okay? Don't let this go to waste. I'm sure I'll find another job, but you need this. Actually, no, they need you. You're the one who can make a difference here. You can win that trophy, Nolan. No one deserves it more than you. Besides, don't you worry about me. I'll find another job in no time." I looked at him, my heart torn between the hope and the reality of everything. I didn't know what to say, but I nodded, wiping my tears away. "I'll do it, Alan," I whispered. "I'll make you proud. I'll win that trophy." He smiled, a look of relief crossing his face. And for the first time, I felt like we might actually have a chance. Over a month later, the stadium was packed, the noise overwhelming. My heart pounded as I stood on the field, facing the goal. This was it, the final match. I felt the pressure of my team and Alan's eyes on me. The whistle blew, and the game burst to life. The other team came hard, but we held strong. Then the ball came to me. I spotted an opening, dodged 2 defenders, and took the shot. The ball soared. The keeper stretched, but it was too quick. Goal! Finally, the whistle blew. We won. My team gathered around me, lifting me up, but all I could think about was the pride in Alan's eyes as he stood on the sidelines smiling. We had done it. We had won. And somehow everything felt like it was finally falling into place. Later that night, it was 2 a.m, and I was finally in bed. My body still buzzed with the excitement of the game, the interviews, the congratulations. Yet something tugged at my heart. I hadn't seen Alan in over a month, and today, despite all its festivities, had felt like it was missing something. Him. Suddenly, my phone rang, cutting through the quiet night. I grabbed it, my heart skipping a beat when I saw the caller ID. Alan. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face as I answered. "Alan?" I said, still a little out of breath from the day. "Congratulations, Nolan." His voice came through, warm and familiar. "Who else would it be?" I laughed softly. "Thanks, Alan." There was a pause on the other end, and then he spoke again, teasing, but with a hint of sincerity. "So, Mr. Popular, could you spare a few minutes for me? Or would that be too much to ask at this time?" I felt a rush of relief hearing his voice. "Yes," I said quickly. "Come outside." I ended the call, got up and threw on a jacket. The cool night air hit me as I stepped outside, looking around. The streetlights cast shadows across the sidewalk. But then I saw him, Alan, standing there, waiting for me with that usual smile on his face. He walked toward me, and I felt everything inside of me calm. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Then he took my hands in his eyes full of something unspoken. "You did it, Nolan," he said softly. "You've always been my champion." I smiled, heart pounding. "Alan." Before I could say more, he leaned in and kissed me. When he pulled away, he whispered, "I love you, Nolan. I've been waiting for you to figure that out." Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't care. "I love you too." And with that, we were finally together. Conclusion. Alan got another job pretty quickly. Turns out talent like his doesn't stay unnoticed for long. I made sure to mention his name in every press interview, crediting him for our team's success. The dismissal was officially listed as medical issues, and no one questioned it too much. We didn't hide anymore. Alan and I are publicly together now, and life's been amazing. We're happy, living together, and finally free of all the secrecy. As for my dad, he divorced my stepmother after the chaos I stirred up. She was furious, but honestly, I didn't care. Dad's not fully back in my life, but he's trying. At least now he keeps in touch more. As for me, I'm starting to dream beyond just playing soccer. I want to coach someday. Be like Alan, guiding players toward greatness. I've learned how much one person's belief can change everything, and I want to be that person for someone else. The end. Do you think the coach was right in waiting till the game before proceeding with their relationship? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.